Today, we're diving deep into the story of a brand that didn't just sell coffee, it completely changed the way we drink it. We're talking, of course, about Starbucks. So let's just start with a number that is, well, it's pretty staggering. Almost 41,000. That's how many Starbucks there are expected to be in the world by 2025. To give you some perspective, that's more stores than McDonald's has on the entire planet right now. And it all started from just one tiny shop. In this logo, right, the green siren, you see it everywhere. It's become this global shorthand for coffee, for that morning pick-me-up, or just for a reliable place to hang out. But this is where it all began, a single storefront in Seattle's Pike Place market. And here's the wild part. The original Starbucks didn't sell cups of coffee, not a single one. They were total purists. They only sold bags of premium whole bean coffee for you to take home and brew yourself. So the big question is, how on earth did a niche shop for coffee snobs become the global powerhouse we know today? That's the story we're going to unpack.
So let's rewind the clock. We're going back to 1971. The whole thing was started by three friends who were really inspired by a coffee roasting entrepreneur named Alfred Peet. They had a pretty simple idea. You see, their vision had nothing to do with creating a cafe you'd stop at on your way to work. Nope. This was a destination for serious coffee lovers, the kind of people who wanted the absolute best beans and all the gear to go with them. It was a store for a hobby, not a daily habit.
And the name, Starbucks? It's actually a literary reference. It comes from Starbuck, the chief mate in Moby Dick. Apparently, the founders just thought words starting with st sounded strong and memorable. And, well, they weren't wrong.
So for about 10 years, Starbucks was just this local Seattle spot for coffee beans. But then, one man walks in, and the company's entire future is about to change, thanks to a trip he took to Italy.
Now this right here, this is the pivot that changed everything. A guy named Howard Schultz, who was the company's marketing director, had a huge realization. He saw that the real magic wasn't just in the beans, but in the experience. He saw that in America, you had home and you had work, but you didn't really have a comfortable social third place. He was so convinced he could build that place that he ended up buying the whole company in 1987 to make it happen.
And once he was in charge, things just exploded. I mean, look at this timeline. In just 6 years, he took the company from only 6 local shops to 140 stores and took it public with a value of over $250 million. It was an absolutely incredible ramp-up. So after they went public, the growth just went into hyperdrive. But, as you can probably guess, growing that fast, well, it doesn't always go smoothly. I mean, just look at this graph. It's a classic hockey stick. The line goes almost vertical. The number of stores went from a handful to over 16,000 in less than 20 years. It was a complete and total takeover of global coffee culture, unlike anything we'd ever seen before. But of course, nothing goes up forever. The 2008 financial crisis was a huge reality check. The company had to make some serious cuts, closing hundreds of stores in the US. And then there was Australia, where they famously had to pull way back because they just couldn't crack the amazing local cafe scene there. So, hitting that wall in 2008 actually taught Starbucks a really important lesson. To stay at the top, they couldn't just be the third place anymore. They had to innovate. And not just the drinks, but the entire way you interacted with the brand. And they came up with some absolute game changers. The Frappuccino, which they launched back in '95, became this massive cultural thing. They were way ahead of the curve on non-dairy milks. And then there's the mobile app. In 2011, this was revolutionary, and it basically created the playbook for how every other big retailer does loyalty programs and mobile payments today. And yeah, we've got to talk about the sizes. It might seem silly, but creating their own language, grande, venti, was a genius move. It made ordering a coffee feel like you were part of a club. It was all part of the unique brand experience. Okay, so that brings us to the modern era. And now, the company's facing a whole new set of challenges, from a workforce that's demanding more to a world that's constantly changing around them. And this is a really big deal. In August of 2021, a completely new chapter started to unfold. Not in a boardroom, but behind the counter, as baristas in Buffalo, New York, decided to launch the first major union drive at a corporate-owned Starbucks in America. They organized under the name Starbucks Workers United, and their goals were pretty straightforward. They wanted better pay, more consistent schedules, and better staffing levels in their stores. And as you can imagine, this has turned into a really complex and still ongoing struggle. The company pushed back hard, which led to the National Labor Relations Board accusing them of unfair labor practices. The union did get its first big win in late 2021, but even so, it still represents a pretty small fraction of the thousands of Starbucks stores across the country.
So with all of this going on, how is Starbucks trying to navigate the future? Well, they're making some major moves. We've seen a revolving door of CEOs. They've started simplifying their menu to try and make things more efficient. And they're restructuring how they do business in China, which is still a massive market for them.
So when you look at the whole story, from one little bean shop to a global empire, the one constant for Starbucks has been change. It has always had to adapt to survive. And that brings us to the big question for today. As customer tastes keep evolving and its own workers demand a bigger voice, what will the next great transformation of Starbucks look like?